Hello everyone, welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for waiting for me. Let's give ourselves a couple of seconds to make sure everything's live and running. Okay. Yes, looks like we're here. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another live stream. Thank you everyone who has been waiting. Thank you to all of my members, subscribers, viewers, everyone, regular moderators, all of the regular viewers and all of the new viewers as well. Welcome all of you. If you're new to this channel, I do these live streams just for your information. I do these live streams for you, to open the space up for you, to have some time, to have an in-depth talk, rather than the short videos that I do that's on the side. If any of you prefer short videos, you can go ahead and watch my shorter videos with updates. The live streams are usually longer, where I can elaborate further on certain topics that I want to speak about, and obviously give you wonderful people a platform to share your views and thoughts as well. And I will obviously try and address as much as possible from your messages and questions, and excuse me in advance if I miss some of them, just because of the level of messages that we get. So I published a video earlier on about the flames in the northern part of Israel and the Palestinian Authority president. The Palestinian Authority, really, not just the president, trying to stir divisions now with Iran. Failed people, failed leadership, upset about the fact that Hamas brought Palestine to the lights, to the global scene, after they failed to do anything for the past 31 years, apart from being bootlickers for the Zionists. And they're trying to hinder everything. They're siding with Israel, trying to occupy the Rafah crossing, pretending to be the Red Crescent of Egypt. Luckily, the Palestinian resistance was awake and they took them. But it's no surprise. The Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas in 2008, was pushing for Israel to go on a war in Gaza and kill people, to take down Hamas, so that Mahmoud Abbas can go back to his house in Gaza. It's important to speak about these people just so that everyone knows where each side stands clearly, and where each side is thinking of going ahead. By the way, you can obviously understand and elaborate and clarify many things from previous patterns, from previous behaviors, but doing these things and also previously blaming Hamas for the genocide in Gaza, I mean, how low can you be? How low can people be, whitewashing the Zionist genocide in Gaza and putting the blame on Hamas? I mean, how much more of a favor can Israel ask for? Hello, can someone Palestinian come and say it's the Palestinians' fault that they're having a genocide? The Palestinian Authority, yes, I'll do you a favor, thank you so much. Hamas, it's your fault. Why? Because you tried to take down some of your prisoners. Why? Because you tried to go back to the properties and lands that you were expelled from, your actual homes, in 1948 and 1967. That's the type of authority that we're having to deal with. Outside the consensus of the Palestinian people, hell, outside of the consensus of the global population, and everyone with an ounce of brain and everyone with a functioning moral compass that's standing with the people of Gaza facing genocide. And that's why I elaborated in that video that you're not talking about a case of Palestine here, and look at them, look at some of them. It's not the case. Now Western populations, they realize they have a problem with their own government supporting a genocide. Genocide against the Palestinian people, temporarily they'll genocide you as well. They already sent your people to die for corporate and political greed. Don't you think they can do it on you as well? People are realizing, yet some people in the Palestinian Authority, they stick to their traditional positions. And obviously, that's after the Lebanese resistance causing so much trouble in the north, and Israel has no answer. People in Israel are not happy. They want an answer. That answer is not coming from the IDF. It's not coming from, who is it going to come from? What are you going to do? You can't defeat these people. But now Benjamin Netanyahu, he's trying to cook something. He's trying to cook something, but without being too obvious. And I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to tell you all of the details and what he's doing behind closed doors as well. Much of it isn't declared. That's why he didn't come out with an official statement endorsing or rejecting Biden's proposal. So you've had Biden's proposal, obviously. That in Israel is called the Netanyahu proposal. Why? The opposition and the protesters in the streets are labeling it the Netanyahu proposal because they know that Joe Biden was referring to Netanyahu in Israel when they pushed for it. And that agreement and that deal includes every single thing that was a red line for the Palestinian resistance. As a matter of fact, Israeli officials are confirming now that the Palestinian Hamas movement and obviously the Palestinian resistance movements with them, represented by Hamas, they haven't moved an inch from their demands from 5 months ago. They told Israel from the ending of the temporary ceasefire, no more temporary ceasefires, and they stuck to their guns. Why? Because they're in position of strength. And why? Because their enemy is being defeated, and they're incapable, and they're being exposed to the world. And they're causing more divisions in Israel and more problems. So now, if it fails, your own plan fails. So he has no other excuse whatsoever. But listen to what he's doing. I'll try not to take too much of your time so I can open up the space for you and take some of your comments and questions. Benjamin Netanyahu was silent the first day. He had a limited cabinet meeting that was closed, not declared. He excluded Smotrich and Ben Gvir. He told Ben Gvir had a conversation with him 2 days ago. He had a statement just over an hour ago, Itamar Ben Gvir, a couple of hours ago that I listened to. He said he had a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu 2 days ago. And he asked Benjamin Netanyahu, after Benjamin Netanyahu told him, we're not going to end the war, this is not the ending of this, it's just a temporary to release the prisoners and go back to the war, which is some of the things that Benjamin Netanyahu is declaring. The typical, we're going to defeat the Hamas. He told him, Ben Gvir asked Netanyahu, I want to look at the draft. I want to look at the draft, because he was excluded from the cabinet meeting and he didn't see this draft, so he wants to believe Netanyahu because clearly he's not trusting him. And obviously you had Bezalel Smotrich threatening to leave the government, and also Itamar Ben Gvir after this press conference, he also said that I'm going to leave the government if Benjamin Netanyahu agrees to a promiscuous deal, as he's calling it, a deal of defeat in favor of the Palestinian resistance. He asked him to see the draft. Benjamin Netanyahu told him, sure, yeah, of course, come to my office and you'll see the draft. Later on, Ben Gvir went to Benjamin Netanyahu's office asking to look at the draft. Obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't there. He had two of his advisors. Two of his advisors, they asked Ben Gvir, what draft are you talking about? So they pretended like they don't know. What draft are you talking about? He said, I had a call with Benjamin Netanyahu. He asked me to come and look at a draft for the ceasefire. They said, we don't have such draft. So he called him, Itamar Ben Gvir called on him in the press conference, because he said the last conversation he had with him was 2 days ago. And in those 2 days, we've had intense things happening that I will be sharing with you as well. He said, Mr. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, can you please be clear and tell us what this deal is about? So far, And in contradiction to what you're being told by some people, the Benjamin Netanyahu rejected it, by the way. He hasn't officially rejected it. There's a likelihood he will, and obviously continue the same pattern he has. That's not a problem for him. He's capable of doing that, but he hasn't yet. In the meantime, there have been intense secret talks for Benjamin Netanyahu. Some of them were leaked. He firstly was offered, before we go into that, there's an ultimatum from Benny Gantz to leave the coalition up until the 8th of June. He said, so 5 days left. If Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't come with a proposal and a vision for the day after in Gaza within the next 5 days, Benny Gantz is out of the government. That means that Benjamin Netanyahu has to replace him, and most likely Gadi Eisenkot as well, which will leave most likely with Benny Gantz. They're in the same party. He's going to have to bring someone else. Who is he going to bring? He's going to have to bring Smotrich and Ben Gvir, but he doesn't want to bring them because he doesn't want them to start dictating. They already have a massive effect on him, and he's being dragged by them, but he doesn't want them to have too much power, and he's trying to convince them this is fine without them looking at the deal. This is what he's trying to do. He's trying to sell Ben Gvir and Smotrich the deal without them looking at it, so that he can go ahead and say, oh, I told you it's temporary, but then it went permanent, Typical Benjamin Netanyahu. That's why they're not trusting him. You see, they don't trust each other, even the closest allies that form a government. In the meantime, he secretly asked, before I go to continue with Benny Gantz, some of his coalition to go and declare that they support the proposal, and some in the religious parties said that we're fine, we'll agree to any deal, we need to end this. Going back to Benny Gantz, the deadline is in a few days. He doesn't want to replace him with Ben Gvir and Smotrich. So he's looking to expand everything and have a network, a protection network for the day after. We've been talking, I told you previously, that Benjamin Netanyahu would end the war if he has a safety net for the day after. This is what he's trying to do now. He's trying to have this safety net with, obviously, the people that always criticize him and said, we'll never have a deal with you and we don't want... Say people come back with Benjamin Netanyahu, who now? Yair Lapid, who's calling Benny Gantz to resign, he's telling Benjamin Netanyahu, I'll give you a safety net to have a deal. And obviously he'll sell it to the Israeli people. It's for the sake of the hostages. It's for the sake of ending the war. We've suffered too much and what have you. Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't shrugged this offer, and hasn't embraced it yet. But he's probably signaling to Ben Gvir and Smotrich that I can replace you if I need to. I can replace you if I need to. But Lapid's numbers are not enough. He needs to have someone else. So who is he speaking now? With his once very close ally and member of the same party. They united their parties previously, and then they split. Avigdor Lieberman. Same bigotry, by the way, just the different shapes. He's been very vocally criticizing for the past several years Avigdor Lieberman, saying that he compromises the security of Israel and he causes us lots of damage and what have you. All right. What did he offer him? He offered him a position of the defense minister. He offered Avigdor Lieberman the position of the defense minister. Replacing who? Replacing Yoav Gallant. Who's Yoav Gallant? He's a member of the Likud party, the same party that Benjamin Netanyahu runs. We haven't had a response from Yoav Gallant yet, but Yoav Gallant could threaten with a big explosion. What's this explosion? He could tell Benjamin Netanyahu that, fine, okay, you want to sack me? I'm going to split from the Likud and I'm going to bring a couple of people with me, and he will most likely have a couple of people who are aligned with him. That can later on, by the way, be dragged again to the Likud party by Benjamin Netanyahu with these fictional ministries, by the way. There are many, in case you don't know, the way Benjamin Netanyahu forms his coalition is bribery. There are dozens of unnecessary ministries in Israel. And his opposition always criticizes him. You have unnecessary, like minister without a file. He's just a minister. Why? So I can be on a minister's salary. It's to that level, the corruption. So he could offer them. You'll be ministers and you won't have to worry about anything, so he can get his way out of it. Now, the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't done this yet, is that he hasn't secured everything yet with the coalition. But there are clear talks and there is progress. There's progress. This is Benjamin Netanyahu. He managed to, I gave it to Netanyahu before. Man can get himself out of trouble. And people were talking about the day after him and what have you. Now he's leading again in the polls. He's convincing people, and he's clearly able to convince some people to go with him. What is likely to happen now? What's likely to happen is someone, either Lieberman agrees to the defense minister position and he gets him in, and Yair Lapid already confirmed that he's going to go in with him. And obviously, that will make it untenable for Smotrich and Ben-Gvir to remain in power, and they will have to leave, which will potentially drag Benny Gantz back in, because Benny Gantz previously said, I'm never going to form a coalition with him. He did. Then he said, no, never again. And now he then did, and said temporarily because of the war. He can do that, then reach a deal, then continue. Why are we seeing that Benjamin Netanyahu has a certain incline to continue with the ceasefire? He's inclined to do that. It's because he said to Ben-Gvir that it will only be 42 days, this ceasefire, it will be temporary, and then we will continue the war. That's not the case, though. This is what he tried to sell to Ben-Gvir, but that's not what Joe Biden declared, which is established on Benjamin Netanyahu's proposal. What did Joe Biden say, by the way? And by the way, Joe Biden criticized people in the Israeli government, right? Signaling Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who criticized him verbally quite a fair bit of times, in particular Ben-Gvir. Ben-Gvir said Joe Biden loves Hamas before. He said, after the initial 42 days of ceasefire, if the two parties won't reach an agreement for the second stage, the ceasefire will continue. Now, that was mentioned by the President of the United States, one of the leading mediators, and the country that's supposed to be a guarantor after the war. And that was a message to Netanyahu. And that's why Netanyahu has this draft, but he doesn't want to publish it. Until when? Until he secures his future. And he is doing a lot of movements behind the scene to try and secure that future. If he does, we can potentially have a statement within the next 48 hours. If he doesn't, he'll go back to the same thing, a continuation of the war. Now, why are we here? We're here for several reasons. First and foremost, the perseverance of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian resistance, and the fact that the Palestinian resistance hasn't been defeated. These are the number one things. Let no one be delusional. Then you have other stuff, like Egypt rejecting to open the borders completely in the beginning and allowing all of the Palestinians in, like obviously the international pressure when it comes to protests and people protesting and encampments, and all of that contributes obviously. But on the ground, if Israel achieved what it wanted, it couldn't care less about anything, because what's happening on the ground drives the results. And what's happening on the ground is the Palestinian resistance is speaking from a position of power, not a position of weakness. If they were in a position of weakness, they would beg for any deal to end the genocide, accept it as well. However, they haven't accepted any of that. They offered them billions to leave and be protected. Some of their leaders of Hamas, part of them. They threatened, obviously, Sinwar, that you'll either hand yourself in or you're going to die before. Then they went looking for him in Khan Yunis. They found his shoe. That was a big accomplishment for Israel. I'm not sure what size it was. 43, 44 EU, I would estimate Yahya Sinwar's shoe size. Don't know how they... what did they do, a DNA test on the shoe? At the time I released the video, I said that they found out something very important in Yahya Sinwar's shoe. They found that Yahya Sinwar's shoe is cleaner than their souls. That's what they found out. Anyway, they were looking for a sign of victory. They clearly didn't get this sign of victory, right? They didn't get this sign of victory. And now, because of the Palestinian resistance strength and perseverance, he's trying to get something, to get a deal for the day after. And this was what I wanted to share with you. Let me open the space up for you. See if you have any comments or questions. Now, Politico saying, quoting a U.S. official saying that the general feeling inside the Biden administration is that Netanyahu wants to stay there politically. Of course he wants to stay there politically. That's what he's been doing all of this time. Okay. Dawn is saying, I'm confused as Hamas have stated that they as yet have not received a formal paper copy of this new proposal. No, because this is a draft. But when the draft meets the core guidelines, this already provides a position of strength and a bigger potential for it to go ahead. The fact that Biden said 3 stages, the fact that he said all of the aid to North Gaza, the fact that he said all aid that Gaza requires, and the fact that he mentioned rebuilding, and he did not mention the elimination of Hamas or taking them out of the government. What does all of that mean? That all of the demands of Hamas have been met. And the devil lies in the details, like the Hamas spokesperson said. But the guidelines are there, and these are the Hamas guidelines. Now, and why I say that this stems from a position of strength, it's because the US tone wasn't like this. They used to give them pathetic offers before and then said, you Hamas, you must accept it. This is the best deal you can get. Get it, accept it now. You think Hamas cares? Hamas told them, I want the minimum requirements. This is it. If you don't want to, okay, continue. Let's see if you had anything on top. Kashmiri Vlogs is saying, will Netanyahu get away from facing crimes if he agrees with the ceasefire? He would want to agree to everything. So, but for him to get away with the corruption charges, he would want some form of security in return to him ditching the judicial reform. So the new people in the government will say that for the day after, if you, for example, want to stay in for another term, and apparently there are reports that he wouldn't mind now an election now because he's he's leading again in the polls, and again drive Israel into this vacuum again, he might stay there. He might get away with the crimes, yes. Terry Lynn Nelson, thank you for your super thanks. He said, what do you think about what is going on in Egypt? There seems to be signals of change within the cabinet. Maybe Sisi has backing from Russia and China will finally stand up to Biden Bibi. Look, I mean, I think the general position of Egypt that they clearly don't want a war, but they're preparing for a war. However, they want to avoid it at all costs. The economic situation isn't great. They have massive developments in Egypt, billions of dollars. They have problems with some of the gas exploration companies. It's not in the ideal state to go into war, but they're preparing for it because they know that they might be forced into it by Israel. And they've been already increasing their ties with Russia. They've obviously joined the BRICS officially in January 2021 alongside Iran, UAE, and Ethiopia. So that's a shift. They're clearly not happy with the norm that was there from the 70s, with the Sadat ideology that, you know, the US holds 99% of the cards. That's no longer the case. At one point, yes, the US position was a bit stronger, although they were facing the Soviet Union, but they were still in a strong position. So they've been slowly shifting away from the US, because even the USA, that's not enough for the Egyptian army. And now they have closer ties with Turkey. They have a strategic cooperation council. They have closer ties with China. And I estimated from the beginning that some of these countries in opposition to Israel and its backers already have some sort of coordination, even if it's undeclared. Bond Dewey is asking, did you hear anything about the kidnapped soldiers? No, I didn't hear anything else. All we know is that the Palestinian resistance had lots of more attacks today, detonating minefields, lots of stuff. Kate is saying, why is Israel so ready to accept the ceasefire, accepting defeat by force of USA? Is it the proposal? And he has been rejecting 5 times since 7th of October. Is he waiting for Hamas to accept this deal? Well, firstly, we don't have an official acceptance from Israel. That's what I would say, Kate. Secondly, well, clearly everything failed. Now, Israel is not in a position of strength. What Israel has been doing in the past 8 months is weakening itself further and further, eating itself from within, completely tarnishing its global image to levels that are irreparable. They will not be able to recover from this, Israel, that's it. And it's tearing apart. What, the brink of civil war, people refusing to serve, attacking military bases, certain parts of the country threatening to seek independence. One of them already did, Margaliot in the north, because of Hezbollah's attacks. No trust in the politicians, no trust in the military establishment. This is one of the most important things. The Israelis have no faith in the Israeli establishment. That was like the sacred cow in Israel, the untouchable establishment, because Israel is a military state. It's a security state, a supremacist, violent military state. And if you affect the army, then you're in fact tearing down the country. And that's what they've been doing. Netanyahu tried to prove a point. He was in a weak position. In many of these cases, he knew he was going to be completely obliterated the day after. If he was in a position to protect himself the day after the war beforehand, he could have made different moves. Also, many things are taken into consideration. Number one, and that's the priority, is the level of fierceness from the Palestinian resistance. Then the lack of coordination from Egypt to open the Rafah crossing for the refugees so that they can implement the undeclared one and only objective of this war, which is the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. Well, not one and only, but primarily the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, because Israel's losing demographically. The Jewish population is decreasing. People are leaving Israel. They're not able to convince people to go back to Israel. They've had campaigns in Israeli media for years now for Israelis living abroad to come back to Israel. Advertisements sponsored from the state, and obviously the Israelis are not listening, who are living abroad, realizing the fact that they were living in a fascist state that has failed and doesn't have any sort of security, and this whole facade that is most secure place for the Jewish people, they realize it's a bunch of garbage. And many of them realize the level of toxicity that exists in Israel and how brainwashed the nation is. So they faced all of that, and they resorted to the ethnic cleansing of more Palestinians. This is how they thought they can extend their life. And who was supporting them with the new ethnic cleansing campaign? The United States government, the British government, NATO governments, you know, the governments that call themselves enlightened and talk about democracy and human rights, and that they have so many organizations, committees for children's rights and women's rights, right? All of that goes into the garbage bin when it comes to Palestine, or when it comes to countries that they have an interest in. They're careless about any of that, really. And these are just slogans that they use to control people and try and sell themselves as if they're somehow advanced or enlightened. So we still don't have an official acceptance from Israel, but from what's happening and from Benjamin Netanyahu's attempts to have people in key positions in the government that will replace Smotrich and Ben Gvir, it looks like we might be heading for something. But then again, Israel's done so much damage in the past 8 months that you don't realize what kind of stupidity can come ahead. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come with a very stupid move, or even escalation with Hezbollah, or a further escalation in Gaza, or even escalation with Egypt at some point, by the way. Eileen Strange, Hamas should not agree to any deal without its lawyers reading the text. Yeah, I'm sure they do have lawyers, and they also have very good experience, and they have fierce negotiators, Hamas. As a matter of fact, Israel was so upset with one of their negotiators previously that they assassinated him after the release of Gilad Shalit. He was responsible for that deal. His name was Ahmad al-Jabari, which resulted to another escalation that was quickly resolved, by the way, because you had the Muslim Brotherhood democratically elected government in Egypt, and they sent their prime minister at the time in Gaza, and they clearly sent threatening messages to Israel, and they stopped it. This is how certain governments affect lives, by the way, and save lives. This is what many people need to realize. So if we had governments that used their leverage to stop this genocidal state, we would have seen different results. And again, it didn't have to be military, by the way. The mere threat. Clearly, we don't have that. The only people who we have are the brave people of Lebanon, Yemen, and Iraq, backed by the great nation of Iran. Zach is saying, what are your thoughts on spokesperson Matt Miller saying that Israel will not be able to defeat Hamas militarily? Is this a way to pressure Israel? They've already said it before. Officials from the US administration already told Israel before, you cannot defeat Hamas. And that Hamas are there to stay. They told us the obvious. I mean, I was saying from the beginning of this war, Israel wrote its destiny by demolishing the Hamas as a military objective, the number one military objective. Why? Because they've tried it before. They failed when Hamas was in a weaker military position many times, not just once. And they did the same with Hezbollah. Want to demolish them? Demolish nothing. The only thing you will demolish and are demolishing is yourself. Israel, the only thing that they're doing is demolishing themselves. That's what they're good at. Demolishing other people. They're good in killing, butchering children and women, cowardice attacks by airplanes, and you have these depraved soldiers bragging about playing with butchered children's toys and raped women and murdered women's underwear, wearing it. A depraved, sick nation you're talking about. Illa man rahima rabbi, as we say in Arabic, apart from those who God had mercy upon in Israel, and there are some of them who obviously oppose this country. But in general, the theme in Israel, it's neo-fascism, brainwashed bigotry. So they're also trying to push something out of Israel by them stating that, you see. Let's not underestimate, and I know this is all talk and what people want to see is action and stuff. Why I get that and I support that. From my perspective, don't say anything and take some action. And don't give us slogans. But when you say and do, that's the best thing. But the statements, the tone, the terminology used by the United States administration, although the US administration is worse than Israel, remember that very well, and much more genocidal, by the way, is very important. And it's not commonly used. Certain criticisms of Israel, certain threats that we will not supply this, we don't approve, you won't get our support. You know, think about this only. The fact that the United States of America, that Joe Biden gave Benjamin Netanyahu a cold shoulder when they were attacked by Iran, and saying we'll only assist you with defense. Previous US policy was if Iran dares to attack Israel, we'll go down full throttle with them. What's that shift? That shift is them realizing, okay, we have a very entitled little brat in this puppet state called Israel who's trying to drag all of our country, to war. Why? For his own political needs. And they don't want to do that. Obviously, there's a question, even if they can do that, if they're in a military position to do that even. Are they capable of doing that? You weren't capable of defeating Taliban because they were moving in the Tora Bora mountains with their flip-flops and blasting your forces left, right, and center that you brainwashed to think that they're going to protect some sort of democracy or women's rights in Afghanistan. What are you going to do with Iran? That's much stronger, and they have so many points on you. Everything in the Middle East, every single base and beyond the Middle East, within shooting range. Their troops in the Middle East, they'll be fired on like ducks. They'll be taken down. And the US knows that. And they're not going to invade or protect Israel with a combined attack on Iran for the sake of Bibi Netanyahu and Sarah Netanyahu and Yair Netanyahu. I told you the Israelis aren't willing to die for him. Which nation is willing? That's it. Israel is a pariah state. They've exposed themselves. That's it. Who's going to go and die for them now? Kate is asking, what is the deal story on Syria? Kurdish have been betrayed by USA 2 times, yet they are begging USA to help them establish a Kurdish state. Look, this really, again, relates back to history. The Sykes-Picot agreement between the British and the French that divided these countries that they controlled, the British and the French previously, it didn't take into consideration anything historic, and they did certain divisions deliberately to keep conflicts. One of the victims of these divisions were the Kurdish people. You're talking about a nation, an ethnicity, and they were scattered between Iran, Syria, Turkey, and Iraq. Okay? So it's not as if there isn't a problem from the beginning, all right? Why? So that they can use them like they're using them now to take down the whole state or the whole nation of Syria. When they say they want the rights of the Syrian people, or do you think they actually mean it? It reached a level where if any Western power is very, very fierce on a certain country, question that. Why are they doing it? Why? Because they were blind when children and women were slaughtered in Gaza. And still are, and still hiding it. So when they sympathize, and that sympathy could stem from a genuine situation of suffering, don't get me wrong here, a genuine catastrophe, but I would question why they're sympathizing. Why? Because you have a new Middle East plan. The new Middle East that was declared by Condoleezza Rice after the invasion of Iraq. On the list, Libya, Syria, Iran. Obviously, with the failed military invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, they realized, we're a bit too ambitious. We're a bit too ambitious. So they backtracked, but they obviously spinned the Arab Spring that stemmed out of a genuine will of Arab populations for reform and rights and democracy in many countries. Western powers immediately jumped on it to try and spin it the way they wanted to, and in many cases promoted it and had forces that are aligned with them to wreak havoc in those countries. So they use something that can be genuine for all of the wrong purposes, not for any right purpose. The last thing these people are interested in is prosperity and democracy and human rights in the Middle East and these countries thriving. They love a Middle East full of chaos and misery, but chaos and misery and wars that are under control, not out of control. That's what they don't like. And if it's not paying off with the Kurdish people, it'll pay off with another ISIS or Al-Qaeda, right? So that they can justify more funding, more military-industrial complex profits, and an expansion of their hegemony attempts in the region. And like I said, these borders, listen, if you go back 100 years ago, okay, 1924, most countries in the world, they didn't have passports or borders. People would travel freely. A couple of Ottoman Empire, Switzerland, a couple of countries had like passports or what have you, travel documents. That wasn't a thing. Then you had this new world order after World War II. That's why I always tell people World War II needs to be read in a different context, from a different perspective, and don't buy the official narrative about World War II, because supposedly the arch enemies of World War II, Nazis and Zionists, they were collaborating. So, and that on its own raises 1,000 questions. Then you had this, these borders and ethnicities and nationalities. What are they effectively doing? And national pride and nationalism. What do you mean national pride? Based on people being proud for their nationality. Who cares about your nationality? What kind of ignorance is it? I'm proud because I belong. You can be proud, although, pride in its own, you need to be a humble person. About your virtues, about your morals, about your actions, about your giving, about your activism, about your call for just noble things you do in life, how you serve humanity, right? Not belonging to a certain country and counting money 24/7. So I think with the departure And with the new multipolar world that we're seeing shaping now, taking shape in front of our eyes, we're going to see many different things. And when we talk about this region, and including the Kurdish people and the Syrians and all of the different ethnicities in the Middle East, what's Israel doing there in the middle? Preventing any sort of unity between Arab states. Did you ever think to yourself, why are Arab states not united? They share the same language. For almost 500 million. Most of them even the same religion. Those who are not from the same religion will have the same traditions as everyone. How comes they're not united? As at least an economic zone or something, right? Why is that the case? And who's benefiting? Who is benefiting? The people that drew the maps, that said Libya needs to be in a square shape. Egypt square, this country, that shape. Obviously, the French took the northern part, the British took the southern part from like Palestine to the north. And this influence still is traditional to this day, although the US obviously took over the British influence after what was called the British Empire, also started to fade away. Kate is saying, do you think Arab regime will hand over Palestinian leaders ICC arrest warrants? Who will govern Gaza? The ICC arrest warrants for the Palestinian resistance are, number one, illegal. They're not substantiated legally. And I criticized them at the time. I'm surprised this Khan guy, this prosecutor, even took this step. He took it in the hope to pacify, or he's compromised himself anyway and trying to act like he's threatened to get some sort of legitimacy. And say, oh, look, I didn't only issue arrest warrants with Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu. It's also against Sinwar al-Dayf and Ismail Haniyeh. Sinwar and Dayf and Ismail Haniyeh are victims of Israeli apartheid and ethnic cleansing and genocide. And they are conducting legal acts within international law, and they are protected under the UN Charter and international laws to conduct military activities against a brutal, racist, supremacist, violent, abhorrent, genocidal state. No one has the right to issue arrest warrants against them. Israel, on the other hand, has been established on all of what I mentioned and more visibly for the whole world. Hamas and the Palestinian resistance, they will be protected wherever they are. At least have this diplomatic backing. And worst case scenario from their perspective, I'll go to Iran, right? Iran is more noble than all of the Arab states combined. The Islamic Republic of Iran, supporting the Palestinian people by words and by actions. By words and by actions, without, including having lots of negative impact when they do that, by the way. Not without a lot of repercussion. Iran could have had lots of perks if they didn't take this position with the Palestinian people, by the way. So I think they will still be protected, and anyone who will hand in any of the resistance movement's leaders will be cursed for life. I mean, you will risk his own people turning against him. Like what, Qatar? Qatar doing that? When Qatar has been pushing for, and housing Hamas there for a while, and the Qatari people support Palestine, did so much effort to raise awareness in the World Cup to come and do that? And even if they do that, what do you think the resistance will stop? They killed all of their leaders before. That's the thing. And Israel knows that by killing the leaders, they gain nothing because the resistance grows stronger and fiercer. All of that they've done now is recruit billions of resistance supporters across the world. This is what they've done. People started to realize from day one what Israel's committing. Oh, all right. Oh, okay. Oh, that's why Hamas attacked them. And then they started to realize and see the Israeli complicity of murdering Israelis on the 7th of October, slaughtering them in the Nova Festival, in the helicopter Apaches, in the tanks in Be'eri and Nir Oz. Israeli pilots going on Israeli media confirming we were ordered to shoot at Israelis, massacring Israeli people. This is a death cult. They couldn't care less about the Israeli people as well. If they cared about them, would they have done what they did in Gaza and carpet bombed it knowingly that Israelis were there? And now we have more and more Israelis dying and reported killed in Gaza because of Israel. They killed over 100 when they were in captivity, when they were held by Hamas. This is a death cult that eats its own people, and it's a representation of the Western powers' imperialism and barbarism against their own people, and how they use them in their own armies as cannon fodder for political and corporate greed. These people are careless about their own people, and everyone needs to remember that. Fadi Awad is saying, why can't we get rid of Abbas? With the PA or the people? Within the PA or the people? Mahmoud Abbas is a puppet. Mahmoud Abbas is a little puppet. He doesn't make decisions. He doesn't do jack all. This man is a puppet for Zionist Israel. He is doing the job that his masters demand him to do. He doesn't go from A to B unless he's authorized by the Israeli Shin Bet. Mahmoud Abbas wanted Israel to demolish Hamas. Mahmoud Abbas is still showing willingness to go back to Gaza on Israeli tanks with the Israeli forces there. He is despised in the West Bank. People have designated channels on social media to ridicule the Palestinian Authority and their pathetic statements. You know, one of them publishes videos, I think it was on TikTok, because the Palestinian Authority calls for peaceful resistance. And he took a video of himself standing in front of an Israeli section, a checkpoint, saying, Israel, can you please take off the checkpoint? And he says, I'm practicing peaceful resistance. I'm speaking with Israel. I'm telling them, Israel, can you please remove the barrier? You know, we want to live freely. Can you give us our rights? And why is that? Why is that sarcasm in this comedy? It's because that's a representation of the truth. This is what the Palestinian Authority has been doing for the past 31 years, asking Israel to give them things, and in return they gain nothing. Nothing but more expansion, more squatter establishment in the West Bank, more abuse of the Palestinian people, more suffering, more checkpoints, more killing, more illegal administrative detention, more kidnappings, more executions. 500 people Israel killed in the West Bank. And what does the Palestinian Authority do? They assist Israel. But he's not there to last. Obviously now they're looking like they want to find him a successor, which will most likely be Majid Faraj. Imdad is saying, Mahmoud Akhi, any news about the Bahrain resistance? We haven't had a lot from them, and to be fair, this statement from them, that doesn't really signal that the attack actually went from there. Someone could have used their name to conduct an operation from another country, but they kind of wanted to send a message. However, Bahrain and Iran are looking to improve their relations. These wild times saying this will only end with force. Egypt, Turkey, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iraq have had enough. I believe war is incoming in the north first, then Turkey and Egypt. I don't think Iran will be involved unless. Look, if it escalates to a level, and there is a prospect of it escalating to that level, because it not escalating to that level would require someone with a level of sanity or political or even military vision in Israel that is not poisoned by this supremacist and arrogant approach, because this psychopathic behavior and arrogant and entitled behavior blindens you. And the Israeli leadership now, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, obviously, and the people who are backing him, they clearly prove to the world that these people, they're not to be reasoned with. They do things that are completely illogical. Like, have you thought about it from a military perspective for 1 second in Gaza? They know very well they can't defeat Hamas militarily. They went and invaded Gaza. It was the worst thing that they could do. And obviously commit these cowardice genocide from their airplanes, bombing innocent people, 40, 50,000 people, the total so far. That's including the missing bodies, most likely. They did it. So there are some people who would say that Israel, for example, wouldn't go to Egypt, wouldn't like interfere with, but so far they've taken every single step they could to annoy Egypt even further. Even if Egypt didn't retaliate so far or whatever it is, so long as they're there, you're talking about a barrel of TNT. All it takes is to drop a light inside and it'll explode. And I wouldn't be surprised if they make a big mistake, because Lord knows all they're doing is mistakes. I mean, even if you're a country in a position of power and you think you're better and you're more well equipped and supported and entitled and what have you, you need to concede sometimes, and you need to accept defeat, even if it means defeat for you. Why? To preserve yourself. But they're so arrogant. They're so arrogant and bigoted. They don't want to accept the fact that a group of strong people managed to humiliate them, who have 1% in total, obviously not the same weapons of what they have in terms of arms, right? But if you're a responsible leader, you wouldn't mind accepting defeat if that means saving yourself. You wouldn't mind that. But Israel is suicidal. Israel is on a suicide mission. And they think that by causing all of the destruction and this genocide, that they can make Hamas concede, or the Palestinian resistance, or intimidate other parts. That's not going to happen. Stephen Burrows, thank you so much for your super thanks. Barry saying, for your information, if you haven't heard, Scott Ritter and his passport had his passport seized while boarding a flight with Judge Knapp on their way to Russia for the St. Petersburg International Economic Summit. I heard that. And that's not surprising. I mean, the man was so vocal. Although in essence, I mean, from my observation of him, he's actually trying to bring Russia and the US together. Instead of, having this stupid hostility that would lead to nowhere and only serve rich people in the military-industrial complex. Scott Ritter, it's not as if he's, against America, right? From what I've seen, his analysis, his tone with regards to Russia and Ukraine, because he obviously talks a lot about Russia and Ukraine, he is a guy who wants to bring Russia and the United States together, which is what we really should have, these big countries cooperating with each other. But the problem is you're faced with this country, the US, with this entitled, arrogant approach. They treat the whole world as if it's their backyard, and they resort to, obviously, draconian measures when they're faced with criticism. Let's see, what else do we have? Amir D. Wood, don't you think that after today there will be an escalation in the north? I mean, the north is burning. Look, Hezbollah are... What are they doing exactly, Hezbollah? Let me find a nice description. Hezbollah are holding Israel in one of their most sensitive parts. Let's phrase it this way. Let's not be too vulgar. And Israel is realizing that they can't do much with Hezbollah. Again, they might make a mistake. If Hezbollah were doing what they're doing now, then Israel would have been all out in Lebanon. They would have been in Beirut. They would have been committing a genocide in central Lebanon and Baalbek and everywhere. But obviously, they sunk in the sands of Gaza. Hamas taught them the biggest lesson in history. Hamas, Gaza. And the Palestinian resistance, the biggest lesson in history, the biggest humiliation in their history, more than the war with Egypt even. That didn't make such an effect. No, forget that. What Hamas has done, that's a different story. Obviously, Hezbollah showed their true image as people who stick to their morals and faith, and showed the solidarity with the Palestinian people in words and in actions. And the level of attacks that they're conducting against Israel is surprising Israel. I mean, they're shocked. How do you think they conducted the attacks in the past 2 days? Nothing detected. They took down the Iron Dome batteries and detectors, and they're destroying Israel in the north. And all of that in this limited campaign. Now, anyone with a sound mind in Israel will think, if this is a limited campaign, what can they actually do? What can they actually do if everything is open? So far, they're just playing with them in the north. Hezbollah have missiles to cover all of Israel from the north to the south. And this is just, they're toying with Israel. And if Hezbollah, see, this is the thing here. And I would assume that people in Israel are calculating this as well, like I am. If I'm the Israeli army and I'm sitting there, looking, watching, as Hezbollah bombard the Northern Air Command like it's nothing, like it's peanuts, annihilating Iron Dome batteries and radars, having targeted attacks on command units everywhere they are, and sometimes even before they are set up, signaling that they have prior knowledge. I think to myself, if they expand what they're doing, then all of the sensitive locations in Israel will be hit. Not under threat, they will be hit. They're obviously using the UAVs. They're blinding Israel by taking down the Iron Dome and then shooting missiles. Intelligence, sophistication, dozens of attacks a day. Then if you're in Israel sitting and just observing what's happening and thinking, if I go on an all-out war with these people, and I know very well I have no intel about them, I'm not going to be able to stop their... look at how stronger they got now. And they haven't used... Hezbollah haven't used probably 15-20% of their arsenal. Not as in use their run out of it in terms of the diversification of what they have. They haven't used 15 to 20%. I think every single place in Israel will be completely roasted. The Kiryah, the government buildings, the Ministry of Defense, the base that Iran attacked, other bases, everything. And it will be documented. Like they documented everything up north. Gulliberg is saying, Israeli finance minister, regarding the fires in north of Israel, it's time to return, quote, it's time to return Lebanon to the Stone Age. That's the mentality that controls Israel, you see, these stupid statements, you know what I mean? Return to the Stone Age by how? By committing a genocide and destroying people. Again, did that accomplish the mission in Gaza? Or did that cause you unprecedented damage? Internally and globally, nationally and internationally. But this is their line of thinking. And that's how divided and split they are. You had a cabinet meeting, by the way, in Israel. One of them said, we need to return Lebanon to the Stone Age. One of them said, we need to eliminate Hamas. One of them said, we need to attack Iran. One of them said, we need to attack Yemen. And one of them said, we need to carry out attacks in Iraq. Focus on this, focus on that. Manuel, thank you for your super thanks. And everyone else as well. Kate is saying, are there similarities between Abbas and Arafat, besides both of them being billionaires? Are they Israel mouthpiece? Look, Yasser Arafat was no Mahmoud Abbas. I can tell you that. That's why he was poisoned and killed. Clearly, Yasser Arafat had red lines that Mahmoud Abbas didn't have. Saying that, Yasser Arafat enabled people like Mahmoud Abbas to be next to him. Now, he had agreements with Israel. He had security agreements with Israel. He imprisoned people from the Palestinian resistance, and he had clashes with the Palestinian resistance in many parts, but nowhere near what we're talking about now. And as part of initial agreements, in the hope that a state and everything was still fresh, we were a few years in these negotiation talks, and we thought that Rabin was assassinated and we were just about to make peace, and maybe someone else will come and we'll continue from where things left off, up until he was poisoned in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. Then you had Mahmoud Abbas, who, I mean, look, you'd be really complimenting the person if you say he's a doormat. What else can I say? I can't find diplomatic words. I'm out of diplomatic words. I'm sorry. You know, I'd rather not use this terminology, but what else am I going to describe? How can I describe him? ever since he succeeded Arafat, what, 2 decades? 2 decades of the same failed recipe? Don't we say the definition of insanity, repeating the same thing and expecting different results? And that's what they're doing. So he's not like him. He is not like Yasser Arafat. That's not to say that Yasser Arafat was perfect or didn't have his flaws. All of them have their flaws, obviously. But Yasser Arafat was different. And no matter what, at that time, the tone, the approach, and the collaboration and many things with the resistance was different. But Mahmoud Abbas obviously is completely different. Tashikoma is Rafah border still closed? Yes. Who's controlling it? Well, Israel's still there, but they're getting hit. We heard that there are meetings between the Americans and the Israelis and the Egyptians to open it again with Israeli presence. Now, Egypt already said we were not going to agree to Israeli presence. However, this talk is coming simultaneously with this approach of Benjamin Netanyahu to try and reach a deal and have a safety net for the day after so he can remain in power. So we're going to see what the outcome would be when it comes to the actual ceasefire. And then if they're going to stay there, if Egypt agrees to open the border between them and Gaza, the Rafah crossing, when Israeli forces are there, that would be a lethal mistake. That would be a grave mistake, a big problem. Will they do it? Can they? They can do it. Will they? I'm not entirely sure. Kashmiri Vlogs, thank you so much. And Morris Eisenman as well in Kashmir. Thank you so much for your super thanks. Sorry, I missed them before. Okay, where are we before we wrap up? Tashikoma Reis's death, no other reports, no. So that clearly, unless Iran comes up with revelations anytime soon. Kate is saying Milikovsky shows a map excluding Palestine. Did he again show map of Morocco minus Western Sahara? Is this a cryptic message, land grab? Milikovsky, Kate is referring to Benjamin Netanyahu and his original surname, like most Israeli leaders, really. We spoke about it over a year ago, how these people change their names. This man denies the existence of a Palestinian people. So to him, there is no such thing as a Palestinian people. To him, we're Arabs. Palestinian people are Arabs who immigrated from one place to another. But Milikovsky, Shertok, Grun, who else do we have? So many of them. It's not as if they immigrated from Belarus and Poland and Germany and Austria in the 20th century. And Luna Di Sol, thank you so much for your super thanks. Much appreciated. Luna Di Sol 1 and everyone else who sent super thanks. Abna Dalil, Brother Mahmoud, do you believe that the resistance movements are capable to annihilate Israel directly without this slow resistance? If so, then why don't they? No, it would be a mistake going all out. Number one, you need to understand, with wars, by the way, it's who can last longer. Obviously, there are exceptions with regards to the levels of devastation, if one side concedes, what have you. But it's who can last longer. The resistance movements, they will use the level of weapons they can to try and drag it as much as possible. If anything, we saw Israel suffering from weapons during this war, not the Palestinian or the Lebanese resistance. Why? Because they went out on a vengeance, hateful genocide from the beginning. From the beginning, landing everything all at once, taking down buildings, doing all of that. Whereas the resistance was wise. They were very wise in how they targeted Israel, how they conducted their defense strategy. They obviously have production 24/7, and they have a lifeline. Clearly that Israel cannot affect, so it wouldn't be wise for them to go all out, because they know Israel loses in wars of attrition. Israel cannot handle long wars. As a matter of fact, Israel's whole war strategy it's called in Arabic al-harb al-khatifa, or like lightning war, thunder war, as in snap and you're done. And usually carry out airstrikes, massive intensity, reach your objectives, get out. Now, obviously, Israel's enemies realized that. And they knew that, okay, they target us from planes and overground, what have you. We need to be very well established under the ground, very secretive, and attack from there. And they learned from history. They learned from Vietnam. They learned from previous wars as well. And obviously, they've become more and more sophisticated with time. And obviously, there's a difference between Gaza and Lebanon, because Lebanese resistance is more equipped than the Palestinian resistance. But regardless of that, the Palestinian people in Gaza, they prove time after time that no matter what they have, they will fight with it. And even Lebanon. I mean, the Secretary General of Hezbollah once said that even if we don't have weapons, like, we'll fight you with our hands. If we don't have hands, we'll fight you with our teeth. This is the mentality. Met with people who flee the war, who flee the country. And they know why they do it. It's a psychological thing. They know we're squatters here. We stole this land. Everything is a pseudo-narrative. Let's get it over and done with. Amin Dania, thank you so much for your super thanks. You said divide and conquer of the oppressed is a deflection, simply won't do with addressing the original sin of raids, massacre of the Israeli settlers. That is the context always evaded. I mean, yes, they implement divide and conquer. Firstly, thank you so much for your super thanks. And yes, they do that. And look, what they've done now, and one of the biggest mistakes that they've done, is they prolonged this so much that they allowed people to open the history books and start questioning everything. And that wasn't to their benefit. Like I said, Zionism thrives in the dark. These evil forces, they thrive in the dark. They don't want light on them. They'll try and hide the light with a million things. But now it's past this stage. It's beyond that stage. And no matter what they do, they are unable to take away or whitewash what they've done. They're unable to recover from what they've done. Kashmiri vlogs. I'll finish with Kashmiri vlogs. You said, worth it, Habib. I've been subscribed to you from the beginning. Alhamdulillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you in this life and the akhirah for the information you provide. Alhamdulillah. And you, my brother, thank you so much. And all of you, all of my viewers and listeners and subscribers and members, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you very, very much. Thank you so much for that message. And let's see if we have anything else before we wrap up. Yeah, Abna Dalay, I'll finish with that. You asked about the chaos in Tel Aviv a few days ago. I spoke about. What's the update about that? Well, look, unprecedented numbers of people protesting. That's number one. Israel is like continuously protesting 24/7. Now they're calling this deal the Netanyahu deal. So they're not allowing Benjamin Netanyahu to get away with it, right? It's intensifying. You have attacks on Israeli bases from people in the Israeli army. You have a split society. But you're still met with Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu, in the meantime, is trying to sow this deal to protect him. But people are still in the streets. And when I told you about the people, at the time, it was still fine. Afterwards, they started to have police brutality. So police on horses started going over people with the horses, stepping on them, women and stuff, and imprisoning people. Complete brutality. And you're talking about Israeli protesters. Catherine Fold, looks like Yemen are really exposing how weak the USA is. Your thought? Yeah, absolutely. Look, we know the US is weak. The US is weak. Look at Afghanistan, look at Iraq. What the Taliban defeated them in Afghanistan. Imagine the world's biggest superpower spending $3 trillion, being defeated from people. Just basic stuff. Why? Because they are the true owners of the land. That's why they used to call Afghanistan the cemetery of the invaders. And they were warned. But they wanted the opium. They wanted to, refresh the military-industrial complex. Don't forget, in the war in Iraq, they used most of the older weapons that they had to renew everything. Obviously stole the oil and all of that. And in many cases, they will be involved in the rebuilding as well. So that's how they, and obviously, yeah. I mean, what do you think I said from the beginning, do you think they're intimidated by the US? Do you think these people are intimidated? Talk about people who are full of faith and belief, and if they die, to them, that's the beginning of reward. They don't view this title world as if it's like we're in a temporary place. We're not willing to die, to live without dignity, and we would rather die dignified and fighting for our rights, which is what every true believer, noble and brave person would do. Not live under humiliation. Who would want to live under humiliation? And those who are willing to live under humiliation, okay, live under humiliation. No, not these people. Not these people that participated and constantly reiterate that their actions stem from their belief, faith, and solidarity with the Palestinian people in Gaza who are being oppressed, standing with the oppressed. The others, they're good in talking, and condemning and saying. The genocide cartel that's supporting Israel, they're good in lecturing the world about how to be an advanced human being and a human rights champion and women's rights and this rights and animal rights and endangered species in the Amazons and da. But when people are slaughtered, they'll cover it up. When babies are chopped to pieces in Gaza, nothing's happening. Where does your talk go? Child protection rights, women's rights, this rights. What? Do you know, even the animal rights in Gaza, animals are being slaughtered in Gaza. We saw so many videos of poor cats and stuff. But no, all of that they'll support Israel. They will support Israel. Why? Because they're worse than Israel. Because they're worse than Israel, and now they've exposed themselves to be worse than Israel. We know that from history, but it's important to remind people who question, why do they support? Why does why does your government support them? Why does the US government support Israel? Maybe it's because they killed 100 times more than Israel, if not thousands. But the French government, 40, 50, 60,000 Algerians a day. Who the British government? Go back to India, go to Africa. Other NATO members, you want me to continue? The list goes on. So to them, what Zionism is doing there is obviously an extension of their entitled supremacist ideology and their neo-colonial supremacist, politically and financially motivated plans. And there's nothing surprising there. The difference is now people are obviously aware of it and are punishing the people who support this genocide. Now we have elections. Look at what happened here. Look at what's going to happen. And things are changing. And don't buy no garbage talk and realize that anyone who's changing the tone now is changing it to pacify you and fool you. Don't buy into that. Everyone who supported this from the beginning should be punished, no matter where they're from. It's very important. Fiza Karunaratne, thank you so much for your super thanks. I'm sorry I missed it before, and I do apologize if I mispronounced your surname. Karunaratne, Fiza Karunaratne. Thank you so much for your super thanks, and everyone else. And Tom Foolery, thank you so much for your super thanks. You said the HHH, I assume you mean Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, resistance, are geniuses. America, Israel are incompetent, toothless. America/Israel are incompetent, toothless old lions being beaten by warriors in t-shirts. Free Palestine. Brother, I couldn't agree more with that. Thank you so much. Love that message. And thank you so much for your super thanks. Marvin Vergus, thank you so much. Marvin is asking me, you ever traveled to US to speak on Palestine, Europe? I don't have travel anywhere. I can sit here and talk to the whole world. Isn't that nice? I'm speaking to the whole world from the same place. These are the benefits of having social media. You sit down, you turn your camera on, you speak to the whole world. Most of my viewers are from the US, then UK, and then it's close between Canada, South Africa, and Australia. And obviously all across the world after that, but I'm just talking about the big countries. And obviously Europe, all parts of Europe, America from multiple states, but the most viewing capital is London. The people who view me most are from London. So drop a like or a comment if you're from London, please. And obviously much appreciation to all of you from everywhere. Hell, tell me where all of you are listening from. Oh, nice. We got lots of Stephen Burrows, London. Yes. Iceland. Israel, London, Stephen. Violet saying my VPN says I'm in London, but I know you're in Brighton, right? You're in Brighton. Zygmunt Freud is watching me from Tel Aviv. Zelda from Scotland. Talal from Hawaii. What? Talal, you're in Hawaii. I thought you were in Lebanon. Zelda, Scotland, we said that. Abna Dalil, Iranian from Sweden. Marvin, US, Pennsylvania. Teresa, Belgium. Crooklyn, where are we from? Where did we go? Crooklyn, Orlando. Ray, Florida. Nelly, Malaysia. Lots of more London. Ruby, Safi. California. We also have Florida. Okay, see how many responded London? Many from London, but many from all parts of the world, and welcome to all of you. I really appreciate you all. But that was an answer to Marvin, so you're publicly speaking, right? You're publicly speaking with everyone. And we have Miami again, and lots more, London and Belgium, Morocco, Italy. And Fiji, Hong Kong, wow. And we have someone from Earth, amazing. Do we have someone from Mars? No, not yet. Who knows, maybe one day we will... we do have Mars. Yeah, here we go. Uncanny Mountains from Phobos, Mars. Welcome, welcome. You have good internet connection in Mars. I'm glad to hear that. Kentucky, Czech Republic, Quebec, New Jersey. Crooklyn K, thank you so much. And we have Roro from Chicago too. Truth Seeker, Shireen from Cairo. Excellent. Welcome, welcome all of you. And thank you so much for tuning in. You see, I like this type of... it's more open for everyone. El Mohammed 92 question: how long do you think it will take to dismantle the apartheid regime? We're witnessing it dismantle and crumble. They're living on borrowed time. There's a limit to how much you can extend the life of something that is unauthentic, violent, brutally violent, you know, by actions, by words, criminal, convicted, hated, split from within, and with the people who are on the suffering side, on the oppressed side, getting more and more vocal and getting more and more people on their side. Like if you had 14 million Palestinians in total, including the ones who were expelled from their homes or in exile, well, now you have hundreds of millions of Palestinian people supporting. So, and we'll wrap it up there. And thank you for everyone else who said where you're listening from. Diana, Michigan, Vivette, Vegas, Mohammed, Canada, GH5, Birmingham, Mark, Spain, Middle Earth, lovely. Salam, Swiss, Puerto Rico, everywhere. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll wrap it up there. Again, thank you so much for being with me. And I'm sorry if I missed, obviously, any of your comments. If obviously, we can continue forever. having a 24/7 live stream. Imagine that, 24/7 live stream. Thank you so much for joining me. I published a couple of videos, by the way. One of them was released during the live stream, so you can go ahead and watch it. I might release another video, so you can go ahead and watch all of them. Apart from that, thank you so much for all of you. I'm sorry if I missed any of your comments, but I really appreciate your contribution. I'm here with you regularly anyway. These live streams are for you mostly. Super thanks to anyone who also sent super thanks. I really appreciate your kind generosity. Luna de Sol 1, Fiza, Terry, Steven, Manuel, Kashmiri Vlogs, Maurice Eisenman, Amin, Tom, Marvin, Crooklyn, and Crooklyn. Thank you so much for your super thanks, and for everyone who participated, anyone new as well joining us. I'm here regularly with you. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your evening, day and night, or depending on wherever you are. And I will see you soon in the next video. Thanks and peace. Take care.